Welcome back, everyone. This is the second session of the afternoon. It's a very interesting presentation about digital health solution and SaMD, software as medical device, key learnings for successful development and launch. Our speaker today for this session is Matt Norton, Vice President of Marketing and Commercial Development at S3 Connected Health. Matt, we are very excited to hear from you, so I'll leave you the space. And for everyone, we're going to have, if you have any questions, we're going to ask them at the end of the presentation. Please write them in the Q&A section on the right side of your screen.
Great. So thank you very much, Dario. Appreciate that. As Dario said, my name is Matt Norton. For those of you who may not be familiar with S3 Connected Health, we create, build, and operate digital health solutions on behalf of our pharma and medtech clients. So we've deployed solutions in over 50 countries, including over 20 products that have been CE marked or FDA equivalent to software as a medical device. I'm going to take you through today some of the key learnings around how to develop digital health solutions and software as a medical device, some tips and learnings. I suspect that some people may also have some quite detailed questions if you're planning or in the midst of a project. And I just wanted to say, if that's the case, as well as entering questions into the text on the right-hand side, feel free to contact me afterwards if you'd like to have a private discussion. Okay, so if we can go to the next slide, please. So for those looking to build digital health solutions, it's really important to understand what typifies a solution being classified as SaMD, software as a medical device. While all products classified as SaMD will be digital health solutions, not all digital health solutions will be classified as SaMD. So it's really important to be clear on where the differences lie. Now, as many of you probably know, what classifies SaMD is not always obvious, but in general, a solution is likely to be classified as SaMD if it plays a direct role in the care of the individual, if it supports the management or treatment of a condition or symptoms, if it focuses on improving the healthcare outcomes, or if it provides further insights on the disease by capturing real-world data or real-world evidence. So software doesn't meet the definition of SaMD if its intended use is to drive a hardware medical device, or if it's simply fetching data. And a lot of other solutions, such as general patient education and patient support or wellness applications, would also not be classified as medical device. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. So, and if you can build 3 or 4 clicks on this, that'd be great. So to elaborate, and then just one more, please, or 2 more, sorry, there we go, until there's a blue box, there we go. So to elaborate on this a little further, this graph shows different types of digital health solutions and what tends to be classified as software as a medical device and what isn't. And on the vertical axis, we can see that there's increasing regulatory requirements, and on the horizontal axis, there's increasing evidence requirements. And you'll see that those that require less, like patient engagement apps, tend to be in the bottom left-hand corner. While the more complex solutions, like digital therapeutics or holistic therapy management solutions, they tend to be towards the top. And while there are exceptions, I tend to say that pretty much everything in that blue section will be classified as software as a medical device. So if you can just do another build on that, please. So I've added some examples here. Obviously, this isn't meant to be a market map, but several of these solutions represent emerging areas of interest for pharma. Things like artificial intelligence and digital therapeutics probably been the most high profile. So as you go up the graph, the potential value of these solutions and what they can bring to a pharma company increases, as you'd expect, because there's an increased regulatory burden and it wouldn't be worth it otherwise. But the line of separation can sometimes be blurred. So, for example, Track-SMA is not classified as SaMD. It's in the rare disease space. It supports patients with spinal muscular atrophy, and it's deployed in a number of APAC countries. What it does is it gathers data using clinically validated assessment tests to provide clinicians with improved oversight of their patients' progression, as well as real-world evidence that's used to improve patient access to medication. Whereas, let's say, Propeller is clearly SaMD. It includes a combination of a sensor that attaches to most inhalers, and it combines that with a digital therapeutic that helps patients and clinicians manage their asthma and COPD. So while a digital therapeutic, for example, will take more cost and time to develop and launch, it should also offer a lot more for stakeholders, the pharma sponsor, patients, clinicians, health authorities, and payers, than a simple patient engagement app. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. So let's have a quick look at how these software as medical device solutions can help address some of pharma's current challenges and why it's becoming increasingly important. So we're all aware of many of the challenges facing the pharma industry, increasing price pressures as healthcare providers and governments struggle with their budgets to meet demand, particularly in a post-COVID world. There's the need to create more innovation and value, and this presents itself in different ways. You've got better clinical outcomes and trying to lower costs for providers, more innovative solutions that improve the patient experience, but also maybe their quality of life. And increasingly, the industry is seeking ways to develop new revenue streams and business models beyond just drug discovery. If you can do the next click to get the next build, please. So solutions classified as SaMD are really well suited to meet some of these challenges, generating real-world evidence to further insights, not just that feed into R&D, but also that support price negotiations and improve access for patients. They help differentiate pharma's offering versus increasing competition. Outcome-focused solutions that provide holistic management of conditions by helping to manage symptoms and comorbidities. And of course, there's the opportunity of being reimbursed for these new solutions, whether that's in the form of digital therapeutics or other reimbursable services. Okay, if we go to the next slide, please. So SaMD classification is based on its intended use, the claims it makes, and the potential risks it presents to patients and users. Typically, the higher the classification, the more evidence required to validate your SaMD claims. So the intended use is important because the specific regulatory classification and pathway that your product must follow will significantly impact your planning and go-to-market approach. All right, the business model may be impacted because not just because SaMD solutions cost more to develop and operate, but they may also open the door to make clinical claims, which could enable reimbursement, okay? The clinical care pathway integration is impacted as the intended use determines exactly what the function of the solution is, where it fits in the care pathway, and who's going to operate it. And conversely, a lack of clarity on that can make the use case very unclear and make it difficult to get clinician and patient adoption. Post-market management, surveillance, and operation, that's required for SaMD solutions. Exactly what needs to be monitored will be determined by both the stated intended use and the risk of patient harm. And finally, the time to market. I mean, the difference between a class 1 and class 2 medical device time to market, as per US regulations, is probably in the order of about 9 months or more. So it's really important to clarify the intended use of your product as early as possible. Okay, next slide. So that takes us on to then choosing and prioritizing regions for rollout. Really important to align stakeholders on your solution and where it should launch first. The reason for that is because that's going to determine specific regulatory guidelines under which your SaMD is going to be classified, along with the evidence and validation requirements required for certification. The approval pathways and the guidelines, they're also going to differ between markets. And it's also very important to consider things like data privacy regulations and how they're going to vary. For example, in the EU, you'll obviously be subject to GDPR, while it's HIPAA in the US, but local laws in member states also have to be considered, such as the California Consumer Privacy Act and Germany's Digital Healthcare Act, DiGA. Okay, next slide, please. So the best region to launch in will vary depending on your individual business needs and concerns. And you'll need to consider multiple factors. But not all of these may be obvious to all of your colleagues. So for example, the US can be attractive because the FDA has a specific department that has the resources to deal with SaMD. So the regulatory authorities are more familiar with the challenges involved in the process, and that's very helpful. South Korea and Singapore are markets that sometimes aren't considered, but they're particularly open to SaMD and other innovative ways of demonstrating value. And there's something of a gateway market and a valuable testing ground. If you succeed in these markets, it's far easier to move into other markets like EMEA and South America. Germany, as everyone probably knows, has specific regulations for SaMD reimbursement managed by BfArM following the DiGA process. And they've existed for about a year and a half. That while they offered the possibility for reimbursement, and that's very attractive, as of last month, May 2021, there was only 15 such devices have been approved in the previous year and a half. There's 24 of them currently been processed. So it's quite a slow process. Okay, next slide. So at a high level, the capabilities required for development and the launch of a pharmaceutical product and SaMD, they may appear very similar. However, in reality, they are actually very different. So we've just seen how the regulatory pathways are not well established. They vary significantly by region and by country. You got different quality systems are required for development and the ongoing operation of digital health solutions, things like ISO 13485 and ISO 27001. And as digital health solutions need to evolve as they hit the market, that's going to mean that the regulatory activities are significant and ongoing post-launch as well. So that's going to require different skill sets, different experience. The tactics to drive clinician adoption are also quite different, and getting their buy-in is becoming harder. During the development of a digital health solution, end user input is critical, and feedback on functionality and end usability is really key to success. I can't stress that enough. The clinical evaluation is required, obviously, for SaMD, but it's not your typical randomized control test. It involves significant ongoing post-market surveillance and the generation of evidence required as the digital health solution evolves over time. Because as soon as this solution launches, it's going to need to be changed and evolved in the market. And finally, then the reimbursement pathways are not well established for digital health solutions. So your launch teams will probably need to be different as well to reflect that. And from our experience, most pharma product MSLs typically don't sell digital health solutions. Okay, next slide, please. So this is my last slide, and I hope that I haven't been too disheartening at this stage. So I'll leave you with some key learnings that I hope will help your path to SaMD successful. Firstly, as I mentioned, look to gain and maintain your stakeholder alignment on the intended use. So unlike a pharmaceutical product where the intended use is fixed during the clinical trial phase, the intended use for a software as medical device may change both during the development process as a result of end user feedback or as the technology evolves. So given its impact on so many other aspects, it's important that stakeholders appreciate the implications of this and they remain aligned. Choose where you're going to launch first, carefully, and don't consider just the most obvious market. Working to a clear regulatory roadmap is essential for ensuring you know exactly what's required, how it needs to be done, and how long it'll take to roll out your SaMD solution. And it's not just enough to think about your first version of the product. You've got to think about how it's going to evolve as well. Digital health platforms are technology infrastructure that are designed to be used across multiple solutions. And they provide core services that are common across digital health solutions. So you don't need to re-implement them each time. And for SaMD solutions, the underlying platform should support key regulatory requirements like security, data management, and medical device regulations. But also by incorporating third-party components and existing platforms, you can really speed up your time to market rather than trying to create everything from scratch. And then the last point is, finally, if you're building, consider the expertise that's required to launch and operate SaMD. It's usually a pretty daunting task for pharma companies. I'd say by leaning on a trusted partner, you can probably avoid many of the common mistakes and the large investment required to make those mistakes, and overcome a lot of the challenges that arise much more quickly. That the end result is likely to be faster time to market and greater value and better outcomes for patients and clinicians. Okay, Dario, over to you. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your time, and I'll be at the booth if you've any questions afterwards.
Thank you so much, Matt. That was a great presentation, very insightful. I have a lot of questions. Unfortunately, we are running short of time, so I'm going to get a question from the Q&A, and then we have to move to the next session. So Carolina was asking, when thinking about a highly regulated environment, which are some possible paths for compliant experimentation or business validation pre-launch for SaMD?
So can you just flash up the question again so I can absorb it?
Yes, there you go. Perfect. You have it on the...
I mean, there's a number of different ways in which you can generate user feedback during particularly the early stages of development, and then obviously the clinical evaluation piece will aid that as well. I'd be happy to talk about that in more detail offline or at the booth later.
Thank you, Matt. Then I'll thank you again for the presentation. Please, if you have more questions, Matt is going to be available at the booth, so reach out to him. I'll definitely going to be there later. And thanks again, everyone. I'll see you guys in a few minutes for the next session.
Thank you very much.